Can you hear me, Phil?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. These fucking computers, hey.
Tell me.
The problem was like when if you have a USB device hooked up to your computer, and if you've it opened in another window, it'll read that off like say YouTube. So then it won't operate Zoom. So I had to close down everything and restart. I was like, oh God. So sorry about that.
That's okay. So
How's
how
it?
we doing?
Oh, I'm not too bad, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Were you you
Must
were you were
been the last.
recording?
Sorry?
You were away recording for a while.
Yeah. I went to Prague to
Nice.
record and mix this album at Sono with Chantal Actor, somebody I've worked with a few times. She's Dutch but lives in Belgium,
Yeah.
and I've made a few albums with her. So did that. Got stranded in Prague for 24 hours because the flight got cancelled. That was fun.
Lovely.
Um, but yeah, came back, and then there's this band, Starlight Campbell, who were kind of blues, or they started out being a kind of blues duo,
Okay.
husband and wife team. She plays bass, and I kind of met them 3 or 4 years ago, and they send me albums, we talk, and I was going to mix this new album, and then I got ill a few months ago with this prostate thing, so I had to cancel. And then they were over here doing a mini tour, and they played Ill Pie in Twickenham.
Right.
So I went out to see that. So that was my actual kind of going to a gig. Was that, which was lengthy
Yeah.
process for a 2 hour set. We drive around the M25 and stuff, but nice to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, the Prague thing went well, but since then, yeah, it's just been just into autumn, dealing with plumbing issues and life in general. So
The
yeah,
joy of life.
all good.
The health's better though, is it?
Yeah, yeah. No, the whole prostate thing kind of got itself sorted with the operation, so recovered well from that. So yeah, all good.
Good man. That's
Mm.
good. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. It's funny. I was listening to what's it, Pink Floyd at Wembley, and I was like, because normally like live records sound shit. And I was like, who engineered that record? And then I look at the back, I was like, oh, the line notes. It seemed that you did it. I was like, all right, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I never knew you did that one.
Yeah, no, it was the last minute um, project. I wrote about it in my book because we had, I'd worked solid for about 2 months,
Hmm.
every day, 12, 18-hour days. And I had this day off, and I was down here in Sussex and get a phone call at like 9 in the morning, having got back at about 3 in the morning. And it was Penny Hansen at Ireland saying, right, you're at Wembley this afternoon recording Pink Floyd. It was like,
That's
hang on,
class.
hang on.
That's
And
class.
Brian Humphreys, who was their kind of main engineer, he was going to record it, but they had lots of PA problems when they were doing, because they always spend a couple of days setting up.
Yeah.
And the previous day they'd had kind of PA problems, and it was decided that Brian would do the PA mix, and then I would come in. And pretty much, I was told you just need to watch the levels, because a lot of it was already set up. But obviously, it's never quite like that, especially on something like, I think it was probably 16 track.
Right. Right.
It wasn't like multi
I
track.
get you.
When you're recording a live gig like that, it's pretty tricky. But yeah, so it was out of the blue, didn't want to do it. And then, went back uptown, got a cab, got out to and recorded it. And it was used for some BBC thing at the time, and then it got put away. And then do you remember about, it's probably 8 years ago now or something, but Floyd started to re-release a lot of other,
Yeah.
versions of record, and they found these tapes because I was out at his barge, and they'd found these tapes, and they said, "Oh yeah, we found this recording. We'll probably work on it and put it out." I'd never got a copy of it, but it's nice to know that that it is around.
Yeah, so they did it I think they put out like 8 years ago, but then they did it this year again too. Like, or yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah, for the 50th. It was like this
Yeah, yeah,
live. It was
cool.
it was a white cover, and I like
Okay.
it looked like Dark Side of the Moon, and I was just like, because you know, like live records, like no, don't really sound very good. I'm not a big fan of live records, unless it's a jazz band or something like that. But like they normally sound pretty like meh. But that sounds really good. Like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is an army. When you work with the Floyd thing, they have such a, they just take over. Um,
yeah,
Put in there, when I worked with Gilmore in, I don't know, 2003 or something like that. He did this concert at the Festival Hall, all acoustic, the choir with the sound ground, but all the instruments were acoustic, apart from a little bit of his electric guitar. And we recorded that and filmed that. And the quality that DVD has, that they're just genius out at Astoria, where they all work. They
yeah,
could just take something. I mean, obviously, we try our best, we got a good, clean recording. But I have a monitor mix of it, and it's like, wow, I'm really pleased with that. And then, 3 months later, when they've worked on it at the barge and tweaked this and smooth that, and it suddenly becomes like, wow, the quality of this is just fantastic. So they
yeah.
just do everything to the kind of nth degree.
Was that the Gilmore gig where Bowie turned up? I know David Bowie
No,
turned up.
it wasn't Bowie. It was it Robert Wyatt?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
he sang the "Comfortably Numb" when they did that track. It was Robert Wyatt
Oh,
who was
okay.
doing that. It was they have it every year. It runs for a couple of weeks, and somebody basically puts on a collection of artists. So it came within that at the
Oh,
time.
all right. Is it like that South Bank Festival? I
Yeah,
remember I went to
exactly.
see Van Dyke Parks at that. He
Yeah,
curated the whole thing. That was that was
I bet
quality.
that was something.
Oh, anything with Van Dyke Parks is always good. Like,
Yeah, no, he's a real hero of mine. I think the guy's fantastic.
yeah, he's a fucking total legend. Like, just like I totally underrated. People kind of
Oh yeah,
when you kind of say him, they don't really. They all. I think they associate him with Brian, which kind of
yeah.
they don't
That's
realize how good he is on his own.
yeah.
It's
That
total.
Discover America album I thought was absolutely fantastic, and just so, I mean, off the wall. But considering the technology at the time, all the things they were doing with the 16 track, it was pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, yeah. What was it like? Like the vibe of recording back, like not just recording, but like the studios and everything, the vibe back then as opposed to now, because it's
Well,
like
I mean, it was incredibly fast.
yeah,
That was one of the main things. I mean, you'd get everyone set up, and within an hour or two, you expect to be kind of running things through. So there weren't those. I mean, that started more in the 80s, but there weren't those hours of getting the drum sound, and it was we all just drummers. We were working with good players. They had their kit was tuned well. We
yeah,
were used to the rooms most of the time they were worked in. Although when I went to America in the 70s to working places, each one was a new experience. But you work fast, pretty much just capturing it. You expected to get quite a bit done in a day,
do you
more
think
than
that
just like a drum track and
yeah,
bass with a guide guitar or something.
yeah,
We doing a lot of those singles in the early 70s. I mean, it was a little bit like a factory, but you would do a 10-to-1 session where you would put down the backing track for the A side and the B side. Afternoon from kind of 2 till 5, the vocals, any other overdub, and then 7 till 10, you mixed. So tracks like Can the Can with Susie Quattro, or some of the sweet stuff I did, that was in at 10 in the morning, 10 or 11 at night. You were walking away with a
that's
finished
brilliant.
record. It was very fast, and all those on that other level, like the Van Dyke Parks thing. But I would imagine that they worked fast. I mean, Little Feat, Richie Hayward, all those guys, they just didn't mess about really. They're great players. They just wanted to kind of party and play. So it wasn't that era of spending hours on getting sounds, or they delivered great sounds. We weren't paranoid with screens as much as we became. I remember recording Little Feat with them in a kind of semicircle with only half screens in front of Richie Hayward. Everyone else
Right.
is wide open with it, because you're trying to capture something and leakage, it can be a good thing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
made the rooms we're in were nice, and it would make things sound glued together and bigger. It wasn't all these little compartments.
It's like, like those Motown records, like they're all close to each other.
Yeah,
Like James is like beside the drummer
yeah.
and stuff like that. Like
And
all
that's
that
a
leakage.
tiny room.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were. I mean, Island Studio 2, where we did a lot of stuff. That was that's a tight little room. You could get maybe, if you cleared out all the stuff, push the piano back, you might be able to get like maybe 15 string players in there.
Oh,
But
right.
it was really a 5-piece band kind of size. So
Oh, right.
drums, bass, guitar, keyboard. Um, and you couldn't screen. I mean, you had to live with leakage.
Right.
Leakage was kind of cool, but we worked fast, and we weren't thinking of replacing as much. I mean, this is an early 70s period, the first half of it. You were trying to capture stuff, and you knew that, yeah, you could add stuff and you could replace something, you could repair, but it wasn't kind of where everyone's head was at. It was just to get a performance. And I mean, there's stuff I worked on back then that has musical errors in it.
Yeah.
But, there's Robert Palmer stuff. There's a Bowie track where there's a bass note thing. There's stuff that happened which people didn't really think was important enough, to change it. It
Yeah.
wasn't as easy to change as it is now. And there were risks, always with dropping in and getting the energy to say it, all of that stuff. I think we prefer to edit between takes than try and drop in repairs.
Right. I think it adds to it though. Like those little kind things. There's a thing on I Still Believe in You. Yeah, that Beach Boys song, I Still Believe in You, where it's like there was a horn and it got recorded on the track, like bit a bit. And they were like, oh shit, we'll just keep it in. And it adds to the track, like these little things, the mistake become a part of the song.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then it's not a mistake anymore. It's like a kind of intertwined thing of it.
Totally, totally true. I mean, that feedback on No Woman, No Cry, the live version of that, at the time when I was mixing it, really bugged me. It's like, bit of feedback. I thought in the early 2000s when Pro Tools was around, if you ever remix the album, you could
Yeah.
lose that now. But in fact, it's something that I now really wait to hear. You know what I mean? It's a kind of great moment now rather than at the time. It was like,
Yeah. That's such a problem of like modern records and kind of making, like, I just know by the way me making stuff myself, you kind of sometimes, if you spend so much time at it, you can like take the whole soul out of it. But like it sounds good and it sounds clear, but it's like soulless. And I think a lot of modern music sounds just oddly soulless.
it's just too good. It's
Yeah.
all it's all too perfect. Everything's perfect in time. The tuning's all there. It's all just like this thing. It's hard to get into it sometimes, be inside it and feel that there's a musician or somebody the other side of this playing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just too good.
Yeah. It's
And that's something that I guess has been happening. I mean, it was happening in the 80s, right? It took me a long time to kind of adjust to the 80s. But in the last 20 years, really, I mean, with the technology and with the way music pop thing has taken over,
yeah.
that seems to be the main, you know. Not that I listen to an awful lot of modern music, I must admit. It's trying to find it, you know what I mean? I hear so much stuff that leaks through from the house. It's like, wow,
Do you think music matters as much? Not individually, because it can matter. I know it matters a lot to you and probably a lot to me and other people,
yeah,
but like as a whole, do you think it
no,
matters much in society? Yeah,
no.
I don't think so
I
either.
think it's just part of now all the stuff that people have, and you've got so much of it now, and it's all
Yeah.
free now. So it's it's different to that feeling in the 50s, 60s, probably 70s. I think it changed. It started to change in the 80s. It became more of an industry and making these. I know we've always had the put together bands, whether it was like, well, I mean, Sweet were a proper band, but some of the
Milli Vanilli and all that kind of shit.
yeah. Um, I think in the 80s that became much more. Well, that was the start of it, really. Up until that point, they were bands and artists who were touring, making records, playing that whole system. In the 80s, it was more manufactured style. It was the SSL as well. You suddenly had a desk that you could recall. Record companies could ask for a different mix now because they knew you could get back to the old one and then change something, which
Yeah.
before that, you couldn't do it. They were one-off mixes most of the time. So
Yeah.
it was like, yeah, we can do another mix, but it'll be different rather than exactly the same plus a bit more hi-hat.
Yeah. So
So it
you,
started in the 80s, but it's just, I guess in the last 20 years, for me, it's got a bit worse. I mean, the 90s I liked, you see. I thought the 90s, for some
yeah,
reason,
it's great.
really interesting because you got out of a lot of that 80s made records with the big drum sounds,
Geisha drum sound. Ugh.
all of that stuff. And it seemed very eclectic. There were so many different kind of styles around, people stealing that and putting it with this. And so I thought that the 90s were actually very exciting. But the 80s were really, disappointing for me. I mean, I
Yeah.
was, I think I might have told you before, but I was leaving in
Yeah.
86,
You were
about
saying,
to
yeah.
get out.
Yeah, it's weird because like my generation are probably the last generation who kind of were like super invested in music. Like, like we could have one CD. We couldn't just have every CD. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
even that one CD that the songs you're like, I fucking hate that song. You'd kind of listen to it. Or actually tape, sorry, I had tape. So you couldn't be arsed forwarding it. So you'd listen to it. And then that song became kind of like you're like, oh, actually really like that song. So you invested more time in it because you actually
Yeah, yeah.
bought it. Whereas now you can just you're done. On to the
No,
next
it's
thing.
all just kind of stream, and also I don't think people listen to music in the site. Certainly not. I mean, I don't even really listen to it that way now, but I do still head in that direction. If I put an album on, I'll put it on and play both sides as an album. I don't cherry pick different tracks. I don't stream and just, I was playing What's Going On the other day.
Oh my God, I was playing that
What an
yesterday.
album, man. It's
Dude.
just, I mean, it's just remarkable. I was just sitting there going, this guy, James Jameson, the lyrics, the whole vibe of it, the editing and the cross, it's just, and that was might have been 24 track, but I mean, it could have been 16, but just beautiful and
Oh, it's
stunning album.
such an amazing record.
And it's
I always
sad.
say it's like the Motown Pet Sounds, I always think.
Yeah. Incredibly sad, though, in a way that it's
Yeah,
50 years old.
yeah.
And, the world is now, I would say, probably even more just like, than it was in 73. And it was pretty great. It's easy to look back and people think that it was all so great. And, in the 60s, you had Vietnam War, which, ran into the 70s. It wasn't all peace and love and everything's great. The 60s, violent, with the American shootings and the race stuff going on. I mean, it's never, some things have always been there. But no, what's going on? I say it's sad because lyrically, it's just like, what an album.
Oh,
You get all the wonderful playing from it, I mean, the musicians are just incredible. But
yeah,
lyrically, it's such a beautiful album.
yeah. Like everything about that record's like just brilliant. They remastered it for the 50th. Yeah, it must have been the 50th. And
Mm.
they did it. Got Kevin Gray to do the vinyl, do the remaster of it that came out this year. Well, it came out in America last year. Dude, it sounds incredible. There's one done. They did a sneaky thing where they get the European one. They got some other guy to master it, but they kind of said it was the same. They didn't say it was done by Kevin Gray, so I had to buy it from America to get the kind of proper. But oh my God, it's the best I've ever heard it sounds incredible, and like yourself, I put that on the other day because I was like, oh man, I'm sick of all this news. I was like, I'm sick of all
Yeah.
this news. And I just put that on. I was like, just and like you said, it's sad. It's sad because it's like how much nothing changes. It's the
No,
same.
and I mean, I come from that, period because I was kind of 17 or whatever in 67 or whatever, but we kind of thought you could change the world, with music and with this whole, if you like, alternative hippie, whatever, well, that revolution got kind of blown. But
Yeah.
what's going on is a perfect example of where you've had that for a few years, but there's this kind of yearning. I mean, the guy is just, yearning for just some peace, some peace, some safety, less violence. Just, hey, brother, let's just sort this, And that was
Yeah.
73, and the kind of dream was breaking. But
Yeah.
and I just don't now see how that atmosphere that was around, probably it was probably like a 10-year period, I guess, with how that kind of thing can ever be either rekindled or a new version, because social media is so brilliant, but it's also a nightmare. you know, so much information out there, so much bad, the media throwing all this bad stuff at you all the time, where there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do. I mean, now
Yeah.
the blanket coverage, it's just 24 hours for Israel. Well, there's nothing we can do. It's not a recent thing. This goes back 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's so divisive. It's like you
yeah,
have to pick a side. Pick a side.
yeah.
You're like, dude, come on, man.
No, and they all, the West always do the same. They always, back Israel, so that's all kind of fine. But yeah, it's just like, escape.
Yeah, that's like it's funny like about that kind of optimism you were saying in the 60s is like I always thought there was kind of like that in the 90s. When I was kind of growing up, I
Yeah,
felt that kind of optimism,
yeah.
and then it slowly just drove off a cliff.
No, it's true. I mean, that's probably why the 90s, say, felt very kind of positive to me. I mean, I was working around, I was around the Rollo quite a bit, but it just felt as if there was this
Yeah, like a movement.
tension and a movement, and kind of some fun going on, and people pushing. It all seemed very positive then. After what I thought the 80s was in many ways, such a stagnant period. But 90s were good for that. But yeah, I mean, where it's going, I mean,
Yeah, and there's like that's a
I
weird
just
thing. Like
try not.
there's no like political music. Like there's nothing like that. Not that there isn't it, but even if there is it doesn't actually get
And there's no
the
leaders.
chart.
There's no
Yeah,
one saying, okay, onwards, guys. This is what we need. They're just doing the political thing, like Biden, and over here we back Israel, and we've just said that we're willing to, take it further, whatever that means. The rest of Europe is kind of going, let's just leave them to it, trying to play it down. But it's all just like there's no one that's kind of going, what we need. I mean, look at America politics is a joke.
oh my God.
We're pretty kind of out there now.
Yeah. But we imported all that shit too.
Yeah.
We imported all their left right shite over to here. I don't remember when I was a kid growing up. Maybe it was, but I was a kid and I didn't care. But I don't remember that like thing. If someone was conservative or left wing, you could be friends with them. Now it's like
Yeah.
if you're not on my side, you have to agree on every single issue down to the minutest detail. And it's like, dude, come on.
I think that's been done by over here, probably Brexit thing divided the country quite a bit. In America, you had the Trump, all his thing, the COVID thing. Everyone, in a way, had these opportunities to take a side and be very opinionated about, what their beliefs are. So yeah, but
the COVID thing was weird because it was like that was just weird. I was like. People were just so crazy with like during that period. They were just crazy. If you had any dissenting view on COVID, it was like, you're a fucking nut. Like it's like, what the fuck, easy, bro. It was like it's just weird. I thought that was weird. It was
very weird.
It was a strange time.
Yeah. And I think we'll pay for it for quite a while. It'll take I think it's going to take years to, in a way, sort out Brexit or recover from Brexit, and also to recover from COVID. I think hopefully we don't have too many other major disasters in the next few years where we can actually catch up with this. But if, at the moment, it almost feels, doesn't it, this is a kind of onslaught of,
I know.
whether it's in this country or another country, there's a kind of a flood here and a kind of earthquake there and a couple of wars going on there. And you just kind of, you can't really. I mean, I try to avoid it, I guess, but it's impossible, isn't it?
I know.
In your head, these things come in, and I say, after all these years, like, Jesus, we're just so stupid. I mean, mankind's desperate to just destroy us.
I know. Like I was going somewhere walking through a field the other day, and there was like these lovely cows, they were coming up to me and they were licking my hand and stuff like that. And I just thought, you know, the worst thing in the world is actually people, like, because every other animal get on grand and whatever, we just fuck up everything.
No,
We've
we've been a very very clever animal, but
Yeah,
I think if we carry on like this, our days are definitely numbered one way or the other.
for sure,
It's
for
just,
sure.
but there's people in America. Um, that I think it's the kind of Christian far right who are actually kind of pushing for Armageddon. You know what I mean? They're kind of, hey, bring it on, and we get the second coming. But there's all these people that are almost like willing this world to just implode, because then out of the ashes will come, Jesus.
Well, it's kind of everything's kind of imploding because you've kind of like so that you have that end, but then you have the other end of like crazy woke shit, and you're just like, dude, shut the fuck up, really. Like, who cares? Like, just who cares about all that stuff? So it's like just two, four,
Yeah, there's
like
some
all the,
important issues out here. Yeah,
yeah, you know what I mean? You
yeah,
know, but that's like, I think that's why music is so powerful, because music actually can bring people together. It's the only thing I
yeah.
think that can bring people together. Like, and I'm not saying the only thing, but it's such a powerful thing,
It still is.
and it's such, it's so devalued. It's shocking. Like, it's the most
Yeah,
powerful thing that's
yeah,
devalued.
I think that's been done because it's become free. Um, because I have a real problem with Universal, but the way Universal have kind of got bought up everyone and run it like a
Yeah.
conglomerate kind of ICI company or something. And I think it has been devalued hugely. It has been, hasn't it? Because if the days of kind of going as an artist to a record um, company and asking for basically a loan, aren't you? You're asking for a deal. You give me this money as a bank, kind of. I'll make a record. You take quite high percentage, 80% or something, goes back to the record company.
Yeah.
And those days have all gone. You don't get those kind of budgets anymore. You don't get deals as such. A&R departments in record companies tend to be scouring the net and looking at who's had a million hits from their own
Yeah.
thing that's been put up there. Then they approach them and say, right, do you want a deal? Do you want to take this into another level or that? But I think we have kind of devalued it. If you stream something and it's only worth 0.003 of a cent or something, it's like, yeah, music's cheap,
Yeah,
The
it's
fact that
terrible.
somebody posted up the other day, and I worked with this guy with Held by Trees, and his albums probably cost around that 20-25 grand.
To make, was it? Yeah.
Probably because
Wow.
he's using,
He's using top
maybe
quality
not.
people.
He's using great musicians. I would
Yeah.
think he has to pay them maybe 500 a day.
Yeah.
Um, they work pretty fast. So it's, the EPs that I mixed recently for him, I think they did 1 or 2 days at Real World. So Real World's not cheap, but it's not Abbey Road.
Yeah.
And they recorded kind of 2 6-track EPs in that time, which I mixed over 2 days as well. So that's only 4 days of studio time, maybe a bit of rehearsal. So they may not be 24 grand, but this article actually wasn't written by him, but it was, this person was just basically saying, my records, if I do it professionally, proper studio, get them mastered, get them done right, it cost me about £25,000 to make an album. And then showed you all the kind of costs of her for distribution and doing it herself, but all the kind of costs, and also then the money that comes back in. And
Yeah.
the streaming is just deplorable.
That's shocking.
How we've allowed, again, I have to put some of the blame at Universal, because they did some deal with Spotify about
Yeah.
6 years ago or something.
Yeah. They were one of the
That
main
might have been
instigators of that.
something. But no, I think, everybody's making records. There's so much out there. It's such a different world to the, probably the 100 main acts of 50 years ago to the thousands or tens of thousands now.
Yeah.
A
And
lot of
it's
stuff.
like there's no like rock stars anymore. Like it's
No,
like
no,
remember people used to go to the films the movies to see like they'd go to a Denzel Washington movie or a Tom Cruise movie, and now people go to see the movie, it's a Spider-Man movie. They don't go, there's no like movie stars anymore, and I think that kind of
right,
equates as
right.
well with kind of musicians and stuff like that. They're like Taylor Swift is she's like a pop star,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
she's huge, but her music isn't great, but I mean she's huge, people go to see her,
yeah.
so there isn't that much of that anymore, I don't think.
Elton John made grossed 900 million on his tour.
Holy shit, really? Jeez.
Isn't it incredible? Cheapest ticket I think was 250 quid or something.
Wow. Yeah, these legacy bands are just killing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And the Stones are going to go out again. Um, but
Not a
yeah,
big
I mean there are none of those kind of. It's just a different area. It's probably been going on for about 30 years, maybe through X Factor or those kind
yeah.
of programs where somebody is kind of made into a star. You know, Robbie Williams band take that kind of put together that whole kind of factory thing. Um, in a way, we've had a lot of that, and I think a lot of people just see that as the way of being a pop star now or being a celebrity. And, you know, a lot of them, I think, just want to be basically celebrities as
Yeah.
much as like a sensible artist.
Yeah. They're like they just want to be famous, and you go, for what? For being famous. You're like, what the fuck? Do you not want to do something? You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna be famous for something. I think that's what kind of drove a lot of people back then. Like, you know,
Yeah,
obviously the Beatles wanted to be famous, but the music always came first. And I think there's just something, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, obviously, we all wanted to be successful back then. I mean, but we were. It was a lot more naive, you know, which is why you hear all the kind of crazy stories with um, East End, you know, guys that become managers or whatever. Um, but yeah, a lot. I mean, everyone, you know, who could pick up a guitar and play in the 60s, who was in a band, you know, you wanted to
Yeah.
out there do gigs and you know try and make this a profession. It just that everyone thought then, as I did, that this would last just a few years. You know, and I think even the Beatles at one point thought, you know, we'd like 2 years, you know. And I thought that, yeah, I mean, I thought at 30 I would be out of the business totally.
Really?
Oh yeah, because it all seemed a very instant, of the moment, short term thing. It was like we were having a ball. This is what we want to do.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as being a you know career I would do when I was 50, 60. You know,
Okay. Okay.
I don't think any of us did. I mean, the Who with their kind of hope I die before I get old. And now they're out in the road 70s, you know, nearly 80s. Um,
Half a who.
won't get fooled again. But you know, you always have to have some kind of thing that makes you you know want to succeed. But again, because of the innocence that I think we all were, and the
Mm.
lack of celebrity thing, like you said, it was big Hollywood stars and big rock and roll artists. Um, I don't think you know, from my point of view, it wasn't about getting wealthy or being a big successful guy. You know, it was when I think of success was for me to actually do what I want to do, which is make
Yeah.
records and work with people. So the fact that I could do that, you know, which I thought would say only last maybe 10, 15 years, that was the success. You know, I mean, I didn't want to be known. I didn't need to be known. That wasn't what we were after, you know. And the money was never great because we were house engineers for a lot of these studios. So it's not like it was easy to get seriously wealthy, although
Yeah.
some people do. So those were the criteria then. It wasn't about money and fame. It was about spending, you know, your day in a studio making music or something. Because it
Yeah,
seemed like a proper
but
job.
that's something that you cannot like that, like the fact of that those days are gone like
Mm.
now, like that, that's like so priceless. Like to have that is just, you cannot buy that. You cannot buy those times, like you know, you working I think you were tape op on All Along the Watchtower. Like that's
Mm.
just, do you know what I mean? Like, that's
I
fucking
remember.
brilliant. Like that just blows my mind. Like you cannot buy that. Like no matter how rich some dude is, a
Oh
billionaire,
yeah, yeah,
can't get that. It's just, you know, like
yeah,
do you, do
totally.
you, did you have any idea what you would have done after you were 30?
Well, I mean, I did actually go and look at farms. You know, I kind of wanted to have a, you know, a small holding or a farm. I was very much, you know, I did come out of that kind of whole 60s thing. I was very much of the land and down home, hippie-ish.
Yeah.
So I thought, I mean, we went and looked at places in West Coast of Scotland and
Oh, wow.
a farm down in Wales. I mean, we looked at probably about half a dozen
Uh,
during the 70s when I was still kind of working, you know, time off. Um, I'm so thankful that I never did that because
it
it's such a hard life. Um,
would
and
be a
now,
completely different podcast.
yeah, really. Um, but the idea of kind of having, I don't know, you know, even if it was small and just a small self sufficiency was kind of. So even when we moved down here, I mean, I had chickens and I had a methane digester and all kinds of stuff that we kind of built and had to try and, you know, make less impact on the planet. So I was
Right.
thinking that even when I was like 21. But no, that's kind of one of the things I wanted to do. But you know what it's like, you just roll on, you know, you got to 30 and okay, the 80s, which was tough, but I had these things like King or China, like these albums that popped up every so often that were successful and kind of kept me, you know, around until say 86 when it's like, right, I'm 36. I haven't worked. I'm out of this, you know. And
Yeah.
then talk, and off we go again. So, you know,
Man,
life.
you know, like the funny thing is, all the podcasts I've done, every podcast I've done on like, so I've had you on, and I've had Tim on, and I had the dude that wrote the book on. They're all the most popular ones are all on Talk Talk. Like I've done like 80 of them, and I've had like Van Dyke Parks on. All the Talk Talk ones are the most popular. It's crazy, like.
It is. It's mad. I mean, it has become. I guess if you maybe this veil of silence is a really clever move. You know,
Yeah, yeah, total
you,
genius, like.
you give out little information. It's all a bit kind of, you know, stern. No, we don't give out any information. And then everybody else involved in it, apart from people like myself and Martin Ditch and Simon Edwards, Tim obviously, and Lee just kind of went, all right, I'm not talking either. I mean, Paul's great because he writes these lovely kind of posts on Facebook, um, which just kind of keeps you up to date with kind of what he's up to and his take on life. And
Yeah,
he's got a, you know, he's a great writer, but he's a lovely kind of guy. But he still kind of gets involved and he's making records still. But yeah, when one person just pulls away and just disappears behind a veil, fine, you know, that's I understood that. I was around Mark for like 13 years, so I could see why I wanted to do that. You know. But then went over the next, what would it be, you know, 5 to 10 years, when everyone else just started to refuse to talk about it and
yeah,
not give interviews and
yeah.
actually get quite aggressive about stuff. It's like, you know, it's really weird. And now, of course, they're kind of almost bigger, or definitely much higher than they were back when these albums were made. There's this, like you say, you know, this interest in them, and the amount of stuff on the internet is remarkable.
Yeah, it's added like there's a mystique now, I think,
Mm.
with Talk Talk.
Huge, you know.
Even probably more so since Mark passed away. You know, people want to know. They just want to know, and I always think that's what's you know, human beings. We kind of exist and then we die. You know, but people always want to make a sequel to everything and want to keep going. And I think when something ends, you can kind of appreciate it more. Like the Beatles ended, it ended, and that was it. And that's why, not saying there wouldn't have people wouldn't have loved them, but I think that's the main factor why people loved them. Like Nirvana ended, and like Nirvana are still massively like the
Yeah,
numbers they get on Spotify are like 30 million a month. Whereas like if they're on their 12th album now, people will be like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know what I mean? There's that kind of thing of
yeah.
something ends, it kind of it does. I think in our brains we're kind of we can
And
relate to
also
it.
that was a really big thing of Mark's. approach to it anyway. You know, once those albums, which weren't obviously easy to make, but once they were finished and that was it, it was like, okay, it was just like put aside, that's over now. You know, and he was into other things, and then so each thing I worked with him on, there was that point where it was just kind of like, well, I don't need that anymore. I mean, they're not albums that probably Tim, Mark listened to very much. You know, Mark definitely didn't.
Didn't listen to his own records.
Not his own stuff. No. I mean, meticulously until it was finished. But once it was finished, we checked the pressings and it was all happy, and he's off doing the odd interview. From then on, it was well, it's past, it's history now. So he was very good at drawing lines. I mean, that's why, you know, when he disappeared like that, or, you know, stopped working like that, it, you know, you could see it because it was so much easier for him to just kind of draw a line onto things and say, right, okay, that's that, it's done. Which it made him infuriating as well to work with because he was so, in a way, cut and dry. He totally knew what he wanted. He knew what he didn't want. You couldn't convince him or, you know, get him to mellow on something. It was like, yes, no. You know.
Yeah. So there's no like collaboration kind of on.
There's kind of a collaboration, but it was more, I mean, my relationship with him, it went on, it was just more like he trusted me to not mess up what he was trying to do, if you know what I mean. So, he, you know, he's getting it, and he said in a couple of interviews, but, you know, whatever instruments we were doing, he trusted me to just get it to sound right. And he would speak up if he needed to, you know, but there was this kind of trust. And when we were doing his solo album, there was much more collaboration between us then, but it was just the two of us then. It was different to the previous couple with Tim. And we knew what we were doing, you know, because it was all scored out. So the album was all, you know, I heard the demo of that album minus the lyrics up in Suffolk, you know, probably 8 months before we even got involved in doing it. He had it all done. But he did have collaboration. I mean, very close with Tim, really. And I think in different periods of his life with the band and different parts of that, Colours of Spring tour especially, you know, there were very close relationships with Paul and Lee and, you know, members of the band, making it all kind of work.
Yeah.
But he was very good at just like, when something was no longer really required, he was very good at just like, okay, cross it out, you know, and he did it with people.
Yeah, I was about to say the same. It seemed like he did it. It was like, that's over, and he could be fine with that, which is kind of weird. That's weird for me.
Yeah.
For me personally, I would find it weird.
The biggest one for me was Lawrence Pendleton, which I guess maybe comes from, I don't know if it comes from Ben's book or whether it's when I met him, you know, maybe a year ago, or just less than a year ago. But he was saying that because he played piano on the acoustic album, Mark's solo album, and he was Mark's son's school teacher. That's how he got the gig of playing piano. But Mark really loved his touch and everything, so he played on it. But they became really good friends, and that's rare in itself, in a sense, with Mark. You know, I mean, he had close friends, but he didn't have a massive, and it was hard becoming a close friend. You know, I was around him for 13 years. I don't know if I knew him that well. It's one of those, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, they got on really well, and they'd go and play golf together. And it went on for, 13 years or 14 years, right from 98 or whenever it was that we were recording the album, and then right the way through until about 2014 or something like that, when Mark just like cutting off. You know, no longer did he, you know, he didn't take calls. He never got in touch. They never went and played golf anymore. They weren't involved anymore musically on anything. And it happened just literally overnight. So who knows? You know, yeah, it's a hard one, which is why I guess the more bits and pieces that get out, but the more, you know, there is a mystery around Mark, and you know, you know, so the fact that, you know, but I think people should concentrate just on Mark. Forget. I mean, I saw a post the other day where some guy's really, you know, desperate to find out about Mark's kids. It's like, look, you know, that's weird. Just weird, bro. You don't need to know about that. If you're interested in Mark and the music, it's Mark. It's not 12-year-old who's now 30 or whatever son. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But people are very, I mean, there's a great one on Robert Palmer. I got this guy contacted me. It turned out he's from Canada, and he wanted to know if I had any photos of me and Robert together. And he was writing a book on Robert, blah blah blah. And he said, and his first wife is down as Sharon. I can't find anything about this woman, you know. So I thought, well, it's not Sharon. I've never heard of Sharon. It was Sue, you know. So I kind of replied back, said, no, I think you'll find it's Sue. And I'll hunt through and have a look for some photographs. And then his tone, you know, came back. It wasn't like, oh, well, thanks a lot. It was like, no, I think you'll find it's Sharon.
Oh, right.
And then I left it, and, you know, it's like, fine, okay. And then it came back again, and he, well, you know, when are you going to send this stuff through? And I know Robert's brother, Mark. So I got in touch with Mark Palmer. I said, do you know anything about, I can't remember his name now, you know, but whatever, Fred.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yeah. He said, he's a nightmare, man. He said, yeah, be careful with him. He said he's got this whole worked out thing of what Robert Palmer was all about. And he's trying to just kind of interview people and get bits that can force his argument. And I said, well, you got in touch about Sharon. He goes, well, I've told him 10 times that there is no Sharon. It was Sue. And it was because in Chris Blackwell's book, he said, you know, I met Robert came out to the ranch or whatever, you know, and brought with his wife, Sharon. He got it wrong, Chris Blackwell, in this book. So this guy read this book and gone, it's Sharon, you know, and refuses and Mark had even been in touch with this guy. So he won't even listen to Robert's brother. You know, so I immediately just like backed right off. It's like, but you know, people turn up and they all sound pretty cool at first. You know, ask me a few questions for doing this, about that. You think it's fine, you know, I'm pretty trusting. It doesn't matter. So there's a few around, definitely around the Mark Hollis.
Yeah.
There is a fringe of unstable.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of obsessive kind of fans within that kind of thing. That's always a weird dichotomy with Mark, because like that book, Ben's book, it's a great book.
It's very good.
But you kind of read it and you're like, shit, man, that guy was an asshole sometimes. So it's kind of like you're trying to separate like that. I remember that whole "you really are a cunt" kind of thing. And you're like,
I mean, I think you know, it's very tricky because you know, it's now 30 years ago, I suppose, since we, you know, or more, since we did Laughing Stock. But I think in hindsight, if I'm being really honest, I mean, it's probably a form of bullying in a way.
Right.
When you take a certain personality in a studio environment and really stick with it, kind of, you know, it was more on Laughing Stock than Spirit Ring. Spirit Ring was a pretty pleasant experience.
Is that why you have problems kind of listening to Laughing Stock?
Oh yeah, I can't. I mean, it's just after the flood, yeah, but not much else.
Well, there's no love in Laughing Stock. There's love. There's no, like, Spirit of Eden sounds like spiritual and like love, but Laughing Stock is dark as fuck.
Dark, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It is, and yet it gets voted as being that, you know, people's favorite of the Tour Talk albums and stuff that I don't really quite understand. But it's just me, you know. I'm too, you know, it's too much of a weird experience. It was dark. I mean, we shouldn't have been doing it in that way, in a sense. But yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure where we were, but
talking about the darkness of Laughing Stock.
Always kind of throws me when Laughing Stock. Oh yeah, but people do kind of vote it as being one of their best. But yeah, I think you've got to just do what Mark said originally, is just like listen to the music.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, in an environment that gives it its best shot. So, you know, not necessarily with headphones walking around a supermarket, but, you know, sit down and really take it in. And I think, and that's it. That's it. You know,
yeah.
What I mean? And I totally think that's the case. We've got to judge him on his music. Yeah, he was an interesting guy. He was incredibly difficult to work with in some ways, and yet incredibly like brilliant.
Yeah.
I've said so many times that he always kind of looked at something from just this other approach. I've never, you know, everything sound wise and things. we all were talking about this, and he'll come in from somewhere completely left field. And initially, Tim or Mark, and myself, or everyone's a bit like, what? Like, where does that come into the equation? And then suddenly, it's like, okay, if we do, So he was always seeing things different to everyone else, which,
Yeah.
is his genius and makes it fantastic, but also makes it unbelievably difficult
Yeah.
when,
Yeah.
if he doesn't agree with everyone else that's around, to just throw it away by going, oh, you really are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You've lost that argument. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
whatever. Whatever
Yeah.
you want to do, Mark.
Yeah.
But I
Like
think, most of the time he was spot on. That's the thing that's also unnerving.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
was right when he wanted to get rid of certain things or keep a mistake, or, he didn't know, obviously, when you're just improvising, throwing all this stuff at the wall, he didn't know how it was all going to end up. But the things he chose during this slow process enabled it to feel real. And that, for me, is the big, I said to you before, but success of those albums is that they feel real. They feel like five guys in a room. And then that's the genius in a way. It
Yeah.
could have been very contrived. If you made the album with Pro Tools, it would be very different.
Yeah. Geez, I wonder what it sound like.
Well, forgetting the actual kind of tones at the moment, because of the difference between that analog and Pro Tools, but we'd have a screen, so where you're just placing things, how you hear them, and shifting a few milliseconds, you could actually, kind of clock it and do it a different way.
Yeah, that's
You've
a
got a
good point.
screen there.
Yeah.
It's easier to cut and paste and move things, because that used to be a big mathematical experience. Um, and I just think it would be a different album. I mean, it could be very close. I mean, the sounds, the only main difference there would be a thing of all digital against kind of, analog and digital. But I think it would be a different album, because I think the editing visually, and the fact that you could cut and paste and be so accurate about stuff, you'd have to really work at being lazy on some of your stuff to
I
make it
get you.
still feel, that's like back to what we said right at the beginning about today's music, because it's all so correct. It just kind of leaves you a bit cold. It's hard to get a really good feel. It's hard to hear the bass player playing off the drummer. All those things don't seem to really quite exist the way that they used to.
Yeah. And we're so conditioned to like, when I grew up kind of recording from, we'll say properly from like 18 to 9, that starting it properly, I was so conditioned to use clicks to record.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always use clicks to record. And as I've got older now, like I recorded a piano song a few months ago or weeks ago, whenever it was out. And I was like, I'm not using a click on this. Like it's a classical piano piece. So I'm not using a click. And you can hear, you can
Yeah.
hear all these little things that are like slightly off and,
Yeah, but
time
it's
wise.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, that piece you put out, that I said, really, it was a fantastic piece. It felt
Oh, thank you very
brilliant.
much.
And the fact that you can just kind of pull something back, or, you know what I mean? You can play it rather than this. But
Yeah.
no, getting back to the early 70s, we didn't use many clicks in the early 70s. I mean, some bands were messing around with it. Obviously, Floyd, probably one of the earliest. I did that Sly Stone stuff with click, but that was because it was based around drum machines. But we didn't do a lot of clicks to the drummer. It was much more the drummer's in control. Everyone played off the drummer, and you get your groove naturally.
Yeah.
The click came in very heavily in 79, 80, and then was with us in a way from then on, but definitely all through the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was hard to sync up all these this new technology, things like Lin drum machines with the SSL, with the SMPTE code, running two machines synced together. There was a lot of syncing going on. And this thing called a SMPTE reading clock, which it cost about £2,000, but all it did was you put, every proper studio had one, but you basically just put SMPTE a copy of the SMPTE code that was running the computer and all your machines. So the same code went into the SMPTE reading clock, and then it just generated. You gave it a start time, say, okay, 30 seconds in. At 30 seconds, it would kick in, and the Lindrum would be in, it would trigger the Lindrum to be in time, and all the other bits and pieces would run off different codes. And it would take a lot to set up. It was a nightmare. But once you've got that kind of thing all locked solid together, in a way, you've got to have a click. You know what I mean? You've got to have something that is anchoring down. This is where we are, because there was just so much to go wrong.
Yeah. I think it works though for electronic music. It does work for electronic music because you want that kind of basic kind of pulse. But I think when you're getting into more acoustic-y kind of stuff, even when I set up clicks now, I will set up, like, say I have a bar of 8, I'll go like 120, 121, 122, 120, I'll kind of do it like that. So you're kind of oddly going out a bit, just, and I think it does something. It's weirdly, you know what I mean? It's I don't know what it is. It's like the imperfections of it kind of are what makes it.
Yeah, I think it just allows you to breathe a bit more over the top of it. It's not, it's not just a fixed 120 thing happening. But no, the piano music is really nice. It was good.
Well, thank you very much.
I thought it sounded pretty good as well.
Do you know, I was listening to that record you did with Bombay Bicycle Club, Flaws.
Yeah.
That's a great sounding record.
It's a lovely record, isn't it?
Yeah. Did you mix that like on a desk and everything?
Yeah, no, that's mixed on a Neve when they had a Neve at the Red Room, which is one of the Moloko studios off the Old Kent Road. Used to be Orinoco back in the 80s, but Moloko bought it and it turned it into the Red Room, and it had a Neve desk. But I mean, that album was, most of that is recorded on 12, 14 tracks.
Really?
Because I can't remember the name of it's not Freddie, but the main guy, who's
Jack.
He had a very basic home, like laptop setup. And I think he was using almost something like GarageBand, but he could only record one track at a time with whatever way he was working. So the drums were like on one track, and the bass is on one track. Everything was just mono signals. And it's recorded in flats in Crouch End. And
oh, cool.
If you listen to it, Kev, you can hear there's the odd siren in the distance.
That's brilliant.
So when they came in, and the link was because of Neil McCall, because his son was in the band.
Ah, okay.
And Neil said, "Why don't you check out Phill?" So we literally we mixed the whole thing. I think it was literally in a day. If not, it was 2 days. But I think it was done ridiculously fast.
Right.
Because they, as usual, with all these things, there's no budget. And all of that. Yeah, I think it was 2 days.
Really?
But because although every track in a sense was slightly different instrument-wise, there were similarities, but they'd been recorded in different places. But the fact it was one track of drums, that's what you dealt with.
Yeah.
It was kind of fast in a way of setting things up. And I love it. I think it's a lovely album. And it was really successful then at the time. It sold 100,000 plus,
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a big album. Got into the charts, all kinds of stuff.
They always remind me of Talk Talk. They not like their sound, but I always thought that they could be a band that could go on to do I like their new music.
Jack's done his own kind of solo album, but
that was cool. That was cool. Mr. Jugs or something.
Is that right? I think he'll be around doing stuff, I think, for years, whether it's with the Bombay Bite or other stuff, but he's an intriguing guy.
Is he, yeah?
Yeah, he is. I mean, when I met them, they were really young in that first album, Flaws. It's got to be 10 years ago or something.
Wow.
If not more. It was 2010, I think. So it could be 13 years ago. Whatever. It was a while back.
Yeah, that's a while.
Maybe it was 2013, but it was a while back. I can't remember saying that. Oh yeah, and so they were really young. I mean, I think Neil's son was like 18. So you've got these kids who are like 18 to 20.
Yeah.
Um, with these great tracks, because I love his voice. I love the tracks. I thought that the vibe of them and everything was just, and simple, not 15 tracks of guitar parts or anything. It was just, two or three guitars or a banjo, mono,
Yeah.
it was fun. And I've done a couple of things with them since. I did a thing for them during lockdown, which was kind of, in a sense, slightly depressing because I had to be in the studio on my own.
Oh.
They weren't allowed there. And I've never really loved all that. I love having, the artist or somebody, preferably the singer songwriter, but or the whole band, but somebody there. When you're just kind of in a studio on your own with a Pro Tools rig. So I kind of got the mixes up, and then when I was kind of happy with something, I would then email it to 5 different characters
Oh,
in
right,
London,
right.
and the manager. And then you kind of sit back and wait. And initially, because I was mixing 4 or 5 tracks, 4 I think. Day one, they were obviously aware of these calls, or these emails that would arrive. So probably get back to me within the hour, and they'll be like, "Yeah, sounds good," or "Yeah, can you do this a bit louder?" Or "I think that's got too much reverb." So then you run off another one with those changes, you send them off. But by day 2, I think the enthusiasm was waning. So I'd kind of send, these mixes away and then hear nothing, and be like 2 hours. That's a little reminder, it was, and it was kind of weird because I've never really worked that way, completely kind of
Okay.
devoid of the musician being there. These telephones or transit, calls to try and you can't mix over the phone in the sense.
Yeah.
It's very hard. But they used, they used 3 of the 4 tracks. My favorite they didn't use for some strange reason, but so I did do that. So I'd probably, I've done, I think, worked with them like 3 times, but the first was The Floors, which was kind of a proper album.
Yeah. Do you mix? How loud do you mix? Do you mix rather loud or do you mix low?
Volume on speakers,
Yeah.
it varies. Depend on the music, but I usually start out on kind of big speakers and check kind of bottom end and all that kind of malarkey, and get maybe 60% of a mix or a vibe up, and then I'll go to kind of
Oh.
smaller ones, give the ears a break, fine tune in, hear it in a different concept. But I don't monitor loud, but I do like large speakers.
Okay.
Like I've got these Tannoy Ardennes here, which are like 15-inch. They're almost a bit smaller than a Lockwood, but they're big. And I just love what you get off those kind of speakers, really. So I nearly always use the big speakers in studios. And I'm not a fan of some of the small, I'm not a fan of NS10s, really. I never have been, although I know once you've got your head around them, they're a fantastic speaker.
Yeah, I used to have them.
They just
Sound like
tire me out.
shit. Sound
They
like
tire
shit.
me out. They just tire me out. Wears down my hearing. But yeah, I like kind of larger monitoring.
But you must have looked after your hearing because your hearing's so great. Like,
It's absurd. I mean, I've just been
that's mad.
lucky. Yeah, my brother and I are both the same. I mean, he's done probably even more perhaps live PA work than I have. But he worked with Rush and
I know, man. Rough.
phenomenally loud. And his hearing's good, but I mean, mine, if anything, it's become more zingy and around 3K or something. That those kind of sounds tend to make me
Oh,
jump.
really?
I used to, yeah. So rather than losing that kind of thing of what's that? I find sirens and the world generally very noisy. When I wear these calmer things when I go out,
I'm the exact same. I'm the
if
same
I
as you.
know I'm going to be in a loud environment, and then went to that gig, I took these other things they have which shut off I mean, they something cut out something like 70% of the volume, but they keep all the frequencies, so it's just like a dimmer.
Are
You
they
put
those? Are they those? I think I might have. I have ones that are like, I don't know. You've seen them ones. They're like what are they called? Earpiece. They cut like they're
yeah,
like
it's that kind of thing.
yeah. They cut like I think it's like 26 SNR. Like you can hear it, but like it
Oh
cuts
yeah,
the shit out of it. Like
but no, I've found that the world is just kind of noisy, and certain frequencies just bug me now. So plates, cutlery on plates, that's the frequency.
oh, that's it.
But no, I've just been really lucky, I think, with the hearing. I mean,
Wow.
it's thing is, great at Olympic and at Ireland initially, they were tannoys and Lockwoods, which were loud and punchy, and they're not that far away from you, but they weren't mega loud.
Okay, I
They
get you.
weren't. Um, they you felt nice sitting against this base against the wall, but it wasn't pinning you. When they took out the tannoys, they put in JBL, huge JBLs, 43s, which were just that was any damage that happened to me. That's when it pretty
Really? Yeah.
they were vicious. I mean, they had horns and multiple speakers all over the
Oh
place,
God.
big and very close to Ireland and loud. And the only time I had my right ear, I was working with this band in the early 2000s called 10,000 Things. They were from Leeds, fantastic
Oh,
band.
you told me about that before.
Yeah, really, I love that band. It was like, well, my brother was over in Canada and he came to the gig and he leant down at some point and went, it's like watching the Who, man. When they but I was just dealing with the volume. It was right on I had no protectors in it. It was right on the verge of like,
Yeah.
this isn't ideal.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine came up and just went, Phill, right? Just yelled
Oh
into my
no.
ear so I could hear. And that's what did the damage.
Shit.
This was kind of just about controllable. This guy going straight into my ear. And I felt it kind of like, whoa, that's not good news.
Fuck.
And it definitely had some effect. It probably took about 2-3 years to really for me not to be aware that this is a bit,
Yeah.
it wasn't that I'd gone deaf. It hadn't changed too much, but I was aware that there was something different now. And it
Right.
probably went on for a couple of years. But no, I've been really lucky.
Oh. Yeah, because it's like it's something that people don't even think about. I had something similar to you. I woke up one day and my ear was just like I couldn't hear. First off, I thought my headphones was fucked because I was hearing like the
Wow.
snare like there over my right eye, and I was like, oh shit. Then I went into my little studio, put them on. I was like, oh, and I kind of panicked a bit. And then I thought, okay, it's probably just something, whatever, like that. But then, like a few days later, the snare was now there, so it had gone. But then it lasted like that for like 6 years. So I had like 6 years of just I couldn't listen to I couldn't really listen to rock music because it annoyed me so much because the kicks would be like there and the snares would be there. But it turned out it was something to do with my eustachian tubes, so in my ears. And because I started getting kind of anxiety about it, I started getting this thing called hyperacusis. So everything was really loud. So my brain couldn't differentiate between something that was like a tip and something that was loud. So if someone like opened the door, it'd be like someone go. So I would be going around wearing those little fucking things in my ears all day, and then it just slowly, like
Yeah.
gradually started to come down. But it's awful, like because it's like
I mean,
it's.
one of the advantage I think is I've never worn headphones much,
I
and
think that's probably
I
wise.
think that's a secret because Tim Freeze Green has terrible tinnitus and problems, and created by wearing headphones.
Oh, is he mixing on headphones and stuff?
Just too loud or feedback whistle, something coming down. Jeff Beck, who used to live a mile down the road, he had terrible tinnitus as well, like madness for him.
Oh, okay.
And he knew exactly when, where it was, the stage he was on, and it was a
Really?
side fill, and something held back and just hit him at the wrong kind of angle, and just
No.
took his hearing pretty much out. And he had tinnitus from that day on. And I mean, he died.
Wow.
He was 70 something, 78 or something. But he got it when he was about 27.
Wow.
Just used to drive me crazy. And Tim the same. I was working with Tim. The last thing we did together, really, this firefly burning, which is very unusual kind of music. And we were working we took over a house in Lewis and built a studio in there
Cool.
and pulled all our gear. And I had my little tannoys with me, System 8 and an amp and stuff. And when I was setting it up, I had a little Mackie desk as a monitor desk. We had all kind of valve mic pre's and all kinds of stuff that we'd play. And when I was setting it up, the right-hand speaker was kind of going. I went, shit, that's really annoying. I'll sort that. And Tim said, no, leave it, man. It's doing wonders with my tinnitus.
Oh, no way.
Something was helping to cancel him out. So he's going, no, just leave it. It's really good. We're going to work with this kind of thing on one side. But no, he suffered a lot from me. But I think that's why headphones. I've never really worn them a lot.
Yeah.
In front of a pair of speakers where possible. Because if something feedback or something you can duck, you know what I mean? When you've got headphones on and it's in your head.
Yeah. Especially blasts, like those blasts. Thing can just blast like
much more disturbing.
Even on Pro Tools, like sometimes you could set something up and you just like thinking it'll just blast out and you're like, fuck the fuck. You know what I mean? Like it's just dodgy, like. And people are always telling people you should mix on headphones. Like, don't mix on headphones. Like fucking at least if your speaker is kind of low, you can kind of mitigate it. And it's not like you were saying, it's not actually in your fucking ears.
That's the thing, yeah. Which is I mean, I've got some Sennheisers, but they're kind of over the ear ones, which I get.
Yeah.
I got given with the people that do Karma, whose name immediately has gone out. Flair.
Okay.
They gave me various kind of buds, headphones that they have. Because I mean, I've been around them now for about 6 years. So they gave me some of the original ones, which were very, very expensive. And now they've kind of got a completely different design where there's a kind of kink in it to go around this bone, because they've twigged that bone is what causes a lot of the problems. So now a kind of little pod that was 300 quid or something is now about 65, because they can basically 3D print these things.
Okay.
So I've got all these kind of different headphones, and I have occasionally, if I really want to check something in detail, I will plug it direct into the CD and I'm there. But it's rare. I mean, that's usually an answer to somebody's question, and usually about talk to them, to be honest. I think that you said about interest. I think over the last 20 years, I've had more people ask me, what is a specific thing at 1 minute 10, right, than on anything I've ever worked on. And I try, it's like, well, I'll check that out, I kind of go and listen to it. Oh, yeah, right. It's nothing.
It's just tell them they got really bad hair. And it's like, dude, you hear
There was a guy back in the mid 70s when I was at Ireland. I did this album with Andy Mackay, who was from Roxy Music. In Search of Eddie Riff, but we were doing these kind of different albums from the Roxy crowd. And I got a letter months after the records came out. Got a letter from some professor in London, and he was asking specifically about a particular sound. And it was written, I mean, you can imagine, it's very hard describing sounds in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah.
He was coming at it from this kind of very straight kind of approach. But he intrigued me. So I spent ages like analyzing what he was talking about and the bit specifically where you could hear it the most.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion that it was headphone leakage.
No way.
That was, you were hearing that on whether it was the vocal mic, whatever it was. But that's what I pinned it down to. So I actually did reply to this guy. I think weeks later, and I'm going to say, I think it might be this. And he was so kind of, he came back, oh, that's fantastic. I wondered if it was something quite bizarre like that. Yeah, but most have talked to.
Yeah, because people are just so like people just yeah, like we said, there's and it's only getting bigger. Like that,
Yeah,
I like Talk is
yeah.
constantly more people kind of getting into them and just kind of pouring over those records. And oh, it's like I think, unfortunately, when someone passes away, there's
Oh
always
yeah.
that
Always.
slight
Yeah. Totally.
which is kind of weirdly annoying. It's good, but it's annoying too. It's like, why didn't you listen to them when they were alive? Like, I get it. It's good that they're getting into the music, but it's
But that's, I mean, I've mentioned that in certain interviews when people have gone, oh wow, what it was like, working with Hendrix or with Bob Marley and stuff, and yeah, it was amazing. But they weren't the gods that they
okay.
were made into. Bob Marley was very. When I first met him, he was very much a street kid from Trenchtown. I mean,
Yeah,
just looked great, a smart guy, but all of them were saying they were these kind of heavy-ish street guys. That the fact that he ended up being this kind of prophet godlike figure, it's very hard. We're talking about different people, really. I mean, Hendrix, I feel that more than with Bob Marley in the sense of because he's my hero too. So to
yeah.
actually work with this guy and just be so in awe of this guy's playing, and then find him dying. I've worked with. I mean, I knew his girlfriend at the time. I've met her since. Well, she's dead now, but I did meet her girl that was with him when it all happened.
Uh,
There's a guy called Yuli John Roth who's in a band, German band, I think, Scorpions,
oh,
and
Scorpions.
something like that.
Like
And
one of those cock rock bands.
he was good mates with this Marilyn woman, and they had all kinds of stories and theories about Hendrix, and I mean, it's definitely not a straight cut and dried story. I mean, exactly
Yeah,
what happened is probably never be known, but
yeah,
definitely mistakes were made and things, weren't handled the best. There's, there is a bit of mystery around the state he was in at the flat and the state he ended up in at the hospital.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
kind of like, wow, when did all that happen? Um, kind of question. But,
yeah.
you know,
What was he actually like when you met him?
he
That
was
must
really
have been.
shy.
Was he? Yeah.
Yeah, when I was, I did the electric guitar bits, but yeah, he was really, I mean, he was really polite, really friendly. Um, but you kind of got the feeling, I mean, this is in a working environment as opposed to kind of on stage, as it were.
Yeah, I get you.
So, when he needed to kind of, get certain things sorted, he was very much that forceful kind of right, let's try this. But if you switch off from him actually kind of working to just being there, having a cup of tea or unpacking the guitar or saying hello, he was very pleasant and very shy. He didn't push himself. So
Oh,
definitely when we did the electric stuff, he was kind of crouched, down playing. It was hard to really see what
yeah,
he was doing. He wasn't, standing there doing a show.
yeah.
But yeah, he was really, really nice.
What
Very
a great band too. That
Yeah,
band was just
Mitch Mitchell.
fucking incredible. Like,
And the drum sounds and things that they got back then on a 4-track, just stunning.
yeah, they're 4-track. Man, that's fucking
Yeah,
mad.
the All Long Watch started off on 4-track, but got bounced to another 4, and then eventually I think went to New York and got bounced to a bigger machine. Um, because 4-track was the kind of, I mean, it was only about 2 months before the 8-track arrived in England, but it was 2 months before, so they were still on 4-track. So it
Yeah.
was done on 4-track. And I've got loads of multi-tracks of Hendrix, which are just 4-track,
Oh wow.
Purple Haze and all those kind of things on 4-track. And you've got drums, fantastic sounding mono drum kit, a
Class.
bass, a guitar, a vocal. And then, I mean, some of them are 6-track because they did 4 and bounced. So then they,
Okay.
it's been archived into Pro Tools or whatever. So you've got your original 4 tracks, then a kind of, stereo bounce or whatever, which you don't need, and then 2 tracks of overdubs. But they're a gem to listen to, especially his vocals, because you hear him talking and coughing before he comes in. clearing himself. Yeah. And then at the end, on one of them, he's going, "Yeah, freak out, let's kind of, mumbling madness, just as the kind of on the outro. Yeah, it was, it shows you when you listen to that, just the fun. I did these teaching things occasionally, which I have mixed feelings about. But one of the things I used to do was play some of these multi-tracks, especially the English stuff, just the vocal, just so everyone could hear what a great time he was having. Because that's the secret, when you try. I know that everyone loves all the angst of making a very difficult album, all that. But, back in that era, my attitude right the way through, really in time, and I worked on a couple of albums that were, Stormy Master, which was pretty out there. A couple of things that were, weird or pushing you to
Yeah.
in a different direction. But I'd never worked on anything like, the torture stuff. So the period before that happened, you were, very much kind of capturing stuff and having a good time or trying, you know what I mean? It was supposed to be fun, this, And I think
Yeah.
a lot of those, if you listen to a lot of those records, or if you can, I've got multi-track of what's going on.
Oh wow.
Yeah. If ever
That
we
was
get into the same space anywhere, I could probably even send you it.
oh do.
Incredible, just to solo kind of James Jamerson along with like the string session, and
Man.
just how beautiful it's all put together. It will blow you away even more.
Wow.
Drums, I think, are on like 2 tracks, maybe 3. Percussion, 16 track, and it's rammed with brass and the strings and with the band and vocals and just amazing. So yeah, I'll try and drag it out and send you some
Oh,
files.
thanks very much. That's what's cool about that record. Like the drums, they're more like they're kind of playing like the percussive instruments. They're not very like loud, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
They're like just kind of gently moving
yeah,
along with the music. Like the
yeah,
vibe of that record. I know we said it earlier, but it's just such a I love the way everything flows into each other.
yeah,
What's going on, then what's happening, brother, and then it just goes into all that. Like Mercy, Mercy Me is such a fucking great.
yeah. Isn't it incredible? Yeah.
Jeez,
But I
like
mean, they got the same stick, that we've had with when they delivered the album. It was seen as like, well, no singles, and it all runs into each other as a continuous piece virtually. So hang on a minute, how are they gonna? So they saw all the problems with the album as opposed to really just like, wow, what a beautiful record.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
happens to so many bands. I mean, it's almost now a cliche where somebody's, massively successful now, but was turned down at some point and
yeah,
happens so many times. The Beatles with Dick James, or saying, not Dick James, the other guy saying guitar Decca, saying
okay, yeah,
guitar bands are dead. It's like one of the classic lines, just as we're about to head into one of the biggest eras. There's always been those. So no, not for us.
yeah. It's
Um,
unfortunate there'll never be another Beatles thing. I remember you put something on
yeah,
your page not so long ago, and it was with Gene Simmons talking about like, there's
yeah,
never going to be another
yeah,
Beatles or a Hendrix and stuff like that. And it's kind of like there can't be the way because the way the business actually is dictated. It just can't.
yeah.
It just
He
can't
was a very
happen.
good artist. I thought he explained things very well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the guy. I think it's yeah. I mean, there's too many people now. The media and the access we have to making music, and everyone can do it at home, pretty much, or even on your phone, probably.
yeah,
I mean, it's the mystique has disappeared somewhat, and then you've just got vast amounts to sift through. Um, I'm sure there's some brilliant stuff. I mean, I do get sent things through to, the odd link, and there are some things out there just like really kind of interesting and out there. I
yeah.
mean,
Just great stuff.
Peppy Deluxe are one of my favorites. It was banned from, I mean, it's Norway or Holland or somewhere else. To make these just insane records,
Brilliant.
just so cleverly put together, and the sounds they get. So there is stuff out there, but it's almost too much.
Yeah, it's like our brains just can't. We're not made to have all the information of every, like, even like we were talking about, like the analogy of news. We're not made to know exactly what's happening in the darkest reaches of somewhere in the world. It's just not. It's just not actually not healthy for us. It's just
It's
not
not,
good
but
for
if
us.
you think back to, many years ago, things used to take so long, didn't they, to get through? So if something happens, it might, in the old days, take a week to get through. Then it became like a couple of days. And then,
Yeah,
now it's seconds and the
yeah,
whole world knows about something. And I think it makes people react differently, especially leaders in different countries. They hear a different way and way things filter through. It's just different now. This instant thing, you have to make a reply, so you immediately take a side, and it's all just it's much messier.
yeah. I think you know what? I think the internet ruined a lot of things. Because like even on every little level, like I love like loads of like alien shit. I love all that alien stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when
yeah.
you were a kid and you'd see like these videos of flying things, you're like, oh my God. But now some guy can tell you it's on the internet, oh, that was some fucking rocket. You're like, oh dude, why was you know what I mean? So that, like you were saying, that mystique, we've lost that mystique in
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
every aspect of life. So I think it's to, I don't know. Maybe it's everything's kind of cyclical in a way, in a
Oh yeah.
weird way. It might, like we might get in this another kind of. I mean, the way it's going, it's not looking very good. But we
It's
might.
not. I mean, the pendulum, probably needs. It's already swung far in one direction now. It needs to, to swing back and find a bit more consensus and normality. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, it's tricky because I mean, the world's always been fucked up. We just we look at these things now, say it's all instant and it's easy to access. I think, oh, the world's in such a mess. It's always been in a mess. I was
Yeah.
born 3 years after a war, World War, and then went through all the other chaos that we, went through the 60s, like I said. So it's always been that. But I do think mankind is destined to destroy itself.
100%.
I just think that that's built into our genes now.
Yeah.
Homo
Yeah.
sapiens, we destroyed everything else. We got rid of all the other forms of men. Um,
And
and
it shouldn't be that way. It should, like, we literally are living on a planet that we should be grateful about everything. We fucking everything. And it's like, nah, man. I'm just gonna, it's just like, dude,
One I don't really get it. I don't understand it. These whether they're phenomenally rich companies and stuff, but pumping rubbish into the sea,
oh, it's gross, dude.
um, digging open cast mines in Africa for some chemical. It just seems so bizarre that we're doing this when we know that this is all kind of wrong.
Yeah.
And these people are incredibly wealthy. Once the planet goes, they go too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like money's not going to make any difference once it's impossible.
Yeah.
So I never quite understand it. It's a bit beyond me, this whole thing, because I've followed kind of Greenishes through this from the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what we're doing now as Greenishes, I don't think is the right thing to be doing anyway.
No, it's like some mad shit. Like over here, they're crazy. I think they want you to like walk fucking to work for about 40 miles. Like you're like, sometimes things go too far the other way. You're like,
Yeah,
dude, you know
yeah.
what I mean? It's like you can't just all of a sudden everyone has to buy an electric car. You're like, how can you afford it? Like
Can't
not everyone
afford
can
it.
just.
And also, they're not the answer. They really are
No,
not.
the batteries blow up constantly.
The batteries are bad news. That's this open cast mining in Africa and stuff. But you should read some of they excavate something like 100,000 tons of something
Cobalt.
to get 1 ton of this thing. They're doing lithium, cobalt, these different kinds. They're not clean. I mean, the battery. Once the car's built, yeah, it's clean, but you have to take into account the amount of energy and crap to make this car in the first place. So if the batteries are really bad news,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of energy used on the car, fine, that's the case with any car.
Mm.
I think they should have explored hydrogen. I still think that's the answer rather than batteries. The cars weigh so much; they're all huge.
Yeah.
You've got an engine or a battery that's shifting 1 ton or 2 ton. It's like, we'll make it lighter. Don't have the batteries, hydrogen. But
Yeah.
I just don't think we're making the right long-term issues on the green thing. I think another gut reaction from governments say, all
Oh
right,
yeah.
the way we do things. And again, these things, it's weird how it happens worldwide, doesn't it? I mean, or, the West anyway. So America hung up on all this kind of thing. We're hung up on this kind of supposedly green, free power, which is no such thing.
No.
Then you go to countries like the Philippines, who pretty much, very poor and live a completely different way of life. And I mean, in some ways it's lovely, but I mean, they're like 30, 40 years behind us. They've got all the technology now. They're all walking around with phones, which they weren't like 3 years ago. But their way of life, there's no way that batteries, electric cars and things are going to be part of their existence for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think here it's going to quite, work out the way they hope.
Well, there's always an overcorrection. Like there's just always like that bullshit ULEZ stuff they have in fucking London. Like that guy is the biggest prick ever. If he like that guy's such a knob. What's his name? Sadiq Khan. He's such a tosser, bro. It's just like, dude.
No, where Sally's sister lives in Croydon, they're on this hill, which is actually now it's Croydon, but it's now part of this ULEZ camera thing.
Oh no.
And it's fine for them because I think her sister's got a car that's only kind of 4 years old. It's okay for mine. Mine's 5 years old. There's a woman on the road who's this elderly lady who's got a car that's like 15 years old. We shouldn't be laughing, but she can't even get in that car and drive out of the road because she has to pay the 12 quid just to get in a car to go down the road to the shops because she's on this edge. It's not been thought through again.
No, but like it's like it's all or nothing. It's like this. It's like everywhere in life. There's the overcorrections and everything is mental.
Yeah.
It's like they go from one end extreme and then they go to the other extreme. It's like, can we just get in the middle there, lads, and just kind of relax?
It won't. Again, it won't change the air quality the way they, because they're not stopping vehicles coming in. If you can afford the 12 quid a day, you can still go in and pollute.
Yeah.
It's only hitting people financially and making more money for that idiot mayor. But it's not being used to clean up the air. They've already said that because they've had this in inner London for a while. They've said it's made negligible amount of difference to the quality of air in London, which is it's still thousands of cars. It doesn't matter whether you paid for it or not. There's a massive kind of problem. You've either got to ban cars, if that's or
I think that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think they are.
They're made for you're rich. You'll be able to afford a car if you're rich. Like that's kind of it seems the way it's going. I know people go, "Oh, that's conspiracy theory," but it's like, well, not really.
No, I think it is going away. And I mean, it's the only good thing about London is public transport is amazing. The buses and the tube, they're every few minutes. So I mean, London has you don't need a car. Out of London.
Yeah.
I'd have difficulty living down here without a car. I guess, you'd just have to slow everything down a lot. But I mean, the nearest shop for me is 3.5 miles away. So
really,
yeah. So I'd have an hour and a bit walk, an hour and a half walk to the shop, and then back again.
Lovely.
Not too.
Yeah, lovely.
There's no buses around.
Wow, so that's peaceful though. I'd love to I'd rather if I lived in London, I fucking would just go away with that.
I couldn't do it.
No,
I loved it when I was living there a couple of times, but I've kind of fallen out of love with London. But it just seems incredibly noisy, busy, and it's lost that kind of freedom that it had. The London of the 60s and 70s, when you could float around in London. I mean, there weren't cameras; you could just, be free.
Yeah.
And now, you're being clocked all the time. It's all very controlled.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem
for a long time.
Yeah. Well, we ended on a nicer note. Musically, what decades do you listen to music more, or what decade do you think is the best sounding?
Oh, well, that's a tricky one, isn't it?
I know you're not going to say the 80s.
No, I mean, there's a lot of, a lot cleaner, a lot of technology that could have made things better. But no, the 80s, it's all too overblown. Um, I like a lot of stuff from the 70s. I mean, I've heard there's a lot of stuff in the 60s as well. I guess 60s and 70s are still my favorite decades, partly from the style of music, but also some of the sounds. When you think back to it being on such kind of basic gear, which is might be why these things sound a bit magical because they just haven't had a lot of treatment. They're just kind of
Yeah.
an idea. But I think for the vibe, I think those 2 decades, I think from the music, the vibe of stuff, and in a way, the honesty of the sounds, it sounded more real to me then. 80s was kind of fiction land, and then
Yeah.
90s was back to kind of real.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one decade, probably the 70s. It was just
Okay.
one.
Okay. Well, is there any records in particular you would say you would kind of
Oh,
that's hard, I know.
yeah. Well, I think we've already kind of mentioned the, what's going on, which has to be up there. Um,
Quality record.
yeah, it's great sounding and totally quality record.
That
Um,
Nick Drake had some great sounding
Nick
records.
Drake, yeah, those first 2 or 3 hours of Nick Drake. I think same with Cat Stevens. Really, I love the first couple of albums. Um, they got, yeah, there was just a kind of sound with Cat Stevens. They messed around with Dolbys.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
Paul Samuel Smith, who was producing it, was the old bass player from the Yardbirds, but he was producing. And they
Ah,
drove maintenance guys at Island Mad, but he used to record with, because it was like Dolbys were in a way a newish thing. I mean, they'd been around since about 68,
yeah.
60. But he would record with the Dolbys, especially those backing vocals that Cat Stevens would do, multi-tracked.
Ah,
And then they'd play them back, but he would adjust the Dolby. It wasn't like fully off, but it was
right.
heading back towards it. So they all got this, like an Aphex Exciter sound. They all got this kind of gloss to them, extra top end.
Ah, cool.
And he used to do that a lot. So those records for me are just, that's my life in Bedsit-land in 1970, when I was living in London and getting together with Sally. And we played Nick Drake, Cat Stevens, were just, probably the biggest. Sly Stone,
Oh, they're great records,
first
man.
album from '69. Stan. Um, so yeah, definitely those artists. And then if you go back into the later, I mean, I don't know, it's tricky with Moxie. I like their early stuff. I thought it was just kind of crazy and off the wall. They just ended up being rather cabaret and boring.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did like the first couple. Um, and kind of rock me. I mean, Zeppelin, God, you can't leave them out. Can you really from the 70s? Phenomenal. Still
Yeah.
sounds great today.
Yeah. They're like super like I always think Zeppelin sound is like raw. It's just
So
like that huge room sound that Bonham
I
had.
love
Like
it. I just you
kicks the
put it
shit
on
out
and
of
it just sounds like you're there. Drums sound like a drum kit if you're standing in a room.
Yeah, yeah.
It all just feels real, and the riffs are great. Plants singing, and up loud. I mean, really, that is a buzz.
Yeah.
I mean, the
That's made
first
to be
album, which
punched.
I guess is that '69? The first album,
Yeah,
possibly it is.
69, yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of blows my date a decade, but I mean, I still play that a whole lot louder. Turn that up, and just the way it starts, and you hear his, the clunk of his hi hat stuff, and then I mean, you can't beat it.
No.
It's a
Like
huge smile on your face, and
you couldn't make those net records now, like you just
no,
couldn't
no,
just
I just don't think you can get the sounds. We've all got too much baggage now, but there's too much technology as well. I think it'd be really
yeah.
hard to go back to that thing and say, right, we're just going to use you know, these kind of mics, a 16 track machine, or even oh yeah, I tell you an album that is one of my all time favorites is Family Music in a Doll's House.
Okay, I've never heard that.
Oh, you've got to check it out.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'll send you it.
Okay.
along with the multi-track.
Man, you know what record you would love, and I know it's not from the 70s, but it's very 70s sounding, is Beck Sea Change.
Ah,
Have you ever heard that?
no, but somebody
Dude, it
weeks
is,
ago mentioned.
dude, like it sounds like like that record sounds for a later kind of record, it's incredible sounding, like fucking incredible sounding. His dad, Campbell, did all the like these beautiful orchestral arrangements. It's a really like low key. I think Nigel Godrich produced it. Pretty
Ah,
sure.
yeah,
It's a
but it's
beautiful sounding
past.
record.
Yeah,
Yeah, you would like that. You would like. I've got like a 96K version. I'll send it to you. It's
cool.
really good.
Brilliant. Okay.
Really good. Really
Well,
good.
on that, on exchanging music over,
Yeah,
over the internet,
exactly, my
we
friend.
shouldn't complain about technology too much.
No, no, no. Us going, hey, fuck this shit. It's good for something. We'll use
It's
it to
very good
advance.
for something. Yeah.
All right, my friend. Hey, thank you very much for doing this.
Not at all. No, it's
I
good to
always
see you.
loved you too, my man. I always love chatting to you.
Take care out
Have a
there.
good one, brother. Bye bye.
Bye.
Cheers.